Okay, welcome to the Domus Search Leadership Podcast. I'm Matt Grady, the host of the podcast. Domus Search are an executive search practice with a focus on biotech and medtech markets in the European space, a European region. And the Domus Search Leadership Podcast is a great opportunity for me to meet C-suite leaders, CEOs, innovators, and change makers within the industry and sectors that I operate in. I'm delighted to welcome today my guest, who's Dax Grant, and really excited to have you here, Dax. By way of quick introduction for my listeners, Dax is an upcoming author, which I'm really excited about. She's a member of the Forbes Technology Council, a keynote speaker, a global CIO and CTO, having worked with organizations such as Visa, Barclays, Santander, a board member for Mission Beyond, a social mobility company, chair and ambassador for Action for Sport, CEO and founder of Global Transform as well. So many things that, I mean, the list goes beyond a page. I'm sure we'll get into that in more detail. Welcome, Dax.
Thank you so much, Matt. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. I know we've been chatting for a little while. I think we've both had the shared interest in leadership, in entrepreneurship, and also building authority in a global market as well. And you're doing an amazing job with what you're doing in working with CEOs and founders, giving them the technology advantage based on your global experience in business. I'm really looking forward to diving into that today. Thank you, Dax. So maybe without me spoiling it too much or saying anything that's not right, perhaps you can give me a bit of a whistle-stop tour into the evolution of your career, into where you are now, and what are the key things that you're up to, Dax, in the work you're doing with Global Transform.
Yeah, fantastic. No, happy to, Matt. I mean, everyone's story is interesting in their own right. I love hearing about different people's stories. I was the girl from the local mining village that couldn't speak any English, so that was me. I went to a local school, and then I had to learn the lingo before I could do anything else. And to be honest, I worked on my subjects, and I wanted to learn, and I was keen to learn, and I learned lots of different things. Beyond that, I think those years taught me more than I ever realised, and my parents had a huge influence within that. But I was really interested in technology and really interested in business, so I jumped into learning about economics, macroeconomic trends, those sorts of things, and also then the technology that underpins it. And I dived in with IBM, and they gave me an open contract to work with them whilst I was at university. And then I wanted to go into general management, so I took an opportunity with Barclays Bank at the time, which really, really interesting. And then from there, my thirst for learning was always there, so I kind of worked through different roles, such as looking after a branch, through to being a corporate lending portfolio relationship manager. Learned huge amounts about different shapes and sizes of business. Wanted to kind of deepen into the tech and consumer and client side, and then really kind of took a series of roles from looking after strat teams to looking after technology organizations, working within Macmillan cancer support, looking after their technology and operations, and lots of different things really. So in all honesty, I think variety is the spice of life, but having said all of that, my family always, in terms of, I always had a dream of having 2 children, so that was always in my mind as well. So there is a balance with all of these things, and I always wanted to write a book, so we did that as well. Amazing.
And here we are today.
Absolutely.
So much done. So you're involved now. So you left the corporate world from a 9-to-5 perspective, and you've set up your own business. You're still a board member and chair and ambassador of a number of organisations as well. I'm really interested to hear the kind of work that you're doing now, and where you see potentially the gaps as well, and where founders and CEOs are not getting it right, especially as technology is really kind of ingrained in our organizations now. I still hear kind of the grumbles from the boardroom as well. Is our tech's not right? This is not quite right. Is it a strategy thing? Is it embracing tech? Are the founders and C-suite cronies and don't really, not really embracing technology? how are you finding things from your perspective looking in?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting world, and for me, having worked with the new founders and fintechs, and then working in large global organizations, I mean, there's so much to learn from the diversity of all of that. And also particularly, we've all gone through COVID in some shape or form, and that has, focused people to look at what's really, really important in life. And I don't think we can underestimate that as leaders of today and tomorrow. And, this is something that the book touches into. It's really saying, actually, yesterday's leadership may have been great, but tomorrow's leadership, we're looking for a whole new dimension here. We're looking for a lot more in terms of both the entrepreneurial side, and this is, irrespective of the size of organization, entrepreneurial skill is really, really important. And, different organizations are in different stages of maturity around all of that, and different stages of realization as well. That is so important. Equally, looking at the societal side of leadership, it's a real must-have now. It's not like yesterday where you could look at certain products. Could you address the ESG and agenda? All of those things, they're really, really important, and they require a mindset shift for some people. Some have got it already, don't get me wrong, but actually when you look at it from a board dynamic and how that works around the boardroom table, there is a lot more in terms of addressing how those board conversations work. What is the board really talking about, and how is that adding value back into the organization? So I guess in answer to your question, my focus is really around that, and a deep passion about enabling those board conversations in a much more influential way, and being able to get through some of that cut through, because often when you're in an organization, there's lots happening, and you need someone that kind of goes, actually, ABC, it's looking a little bit like that. What do you think? And get those views kind of coming in. The other side of it is really about humanizing business. And that's so important today, because absolutely pay and remuneration is important. But the business you're in, particularly if you're working sort of hybrid or, remote and all of those things, what you stand for as a business and what your employees join a business for and stay in a business for is very, very different today. And it's quite a lot more profound, because people have had a good think about what they stand for.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you get involved in those conversations around what are the people we need as well? I guess that's maybe where our industries align and cross over as well. And these are the skills you have in the business. Actually, what you think you need is this, but what you really need is this.
Yeah, and this is about the chemistry and balance of the business, and whether you're the CEO, the CIO, or the CIO, you've got to get that balance right. And it's really important to work with the commercial arm of the business, but equally, as a society, we spend a lot of time teaching facts and giving opinions and all of those things, and they are really, really important. But the softer skills of listening, of how do you create a cohesive team, how do you role model that from a board perspective, all of those different things are much softer skills, and really important to look at how those dynamics are working, and make sure the organization is really externally focused, because the market moves, and yesterday's business model is very different from today's business model and tomorrow's business model. I mean, you look at some of the subscription models that are there now, that's the way they make money, right? It's a whole different model from some of the ownership models before. So being able to preempt those shifts and drive those shifts and drive that cultural change takes a huge number of different factors, and the recognition of we all have limits, right? So I personally love recruiting people that are different to me. It just gives their periphery vision to everything you're working on. And it also creates a great cohesive team, because if everyone's really listening, you create that culture, what you come up with is quite different. And that to me is where the interesting conversation starts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I watched the video actually on LinkedIn, funny enough, and it was an Indian chap, and he was talking to somebody. It looked like a seminar, and he was talking about the evolution of through the ages of industrial technology, digital and social. And he said actually the shift in behavior, or the shift in what we used to perceive as loyalties, is now down to choice as well. And what you might have thought 100 years ago was loyal, he said actually they were never loyal, they just didn't have a lot of choice. Whereas the people coming through now, they have the standard of living, they have the choice of opportunities. It's more about the organization and the conversations and the impact and the purpose, rather than just we have a job, it pays X. There's many more factors involved. I'll send you the video. I don't want to kind of dilute it too much, but it's quite a good one there. And also the topic as well of recruiting diverse boards and a diverse leadership as well. Something that we touched on briefly before the recording as well was getting diverse thought as well, but also gender diversity as well. And I guess maybe I don't know exactly, because I've only been recruiting really for 11 years and interacting with organizations, but my personal experience has been very male focused technology leaders. Has that been your experience, and how is that coming through the ranks as a leader in technology, not just in your organization but globally as well, that you've been recognized for?
It's some really good questions there, Matt. Diversity is so important, and I come at this from a number of different angles. I mean, women in tech is clearly very important, and women in the boardroom is clearly very important, but also minority groups of any shape or form all needs to be considered. I mean, I do a lot of work in terms of social mobility, and that's part of my personal belief system and part of my history as well, in that I believe if you want to get from A to B, career-wise and enterprise-wide, there's nothing to stop you. You may take different routes. Some people go to uni, some people, take apprenticeships, some people set up their own business straight away. Your path is your own to determine, with guidance, I would say. But it's really around, looking at how that diverse mix works, and also making sure there's a focus on inclusion as well as diversity. There's a lot of focus on the recruitment side of things, but the retention side of things is really important as well. And it's blending those things and creating a natural environment in the team that, it self-perpetuates, it grows. And, folks like the recruiters of today, our headhunters, all of those folks that are out there in the world, absolutely key influencing role in terms of opening up that diverse set of thoughts at the boardroom, at the leadership level. It's a real two-way street, and I think there's opportunity now, certainly with everything we've got on social, for folks to get involved and start to really create that creative mix for the good of society, really, as well as the organisations we work in. Yeah,
absolutely. And just rounding off the sort of business section of the podcast here, when I'm speaking to businesses often, having similar conversations on a daily basis, I start to see patterns and trends of the challenges that organizations have. Is that the same in technology as well, and the entrepreneurial leadership that you're coaching and partnering with organizations? Do you see trends across industries?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely industry trends. There are also maturity trends in terms of the level of leadership awareness and understanding. And also there's the natural cycle of a growth stage of a firm. So, a firm in early growth is going to have a certain type of culture. As it comes to maturity stage, it's going to adopt a different set of movements within the firm and how that culture really works. But it's about being aware of those and being aware of what's useful and harnesses the energy for the good of the organisation, the people within it, the stakeholders in society, and actually what needs to morph again, because the organisation will morph again, partly due to the next maturity shift, but also those industry trends are moving. If we're looking at what's happening with tech, if we're looking more broadly in terms of business opportunities, accessing those is very, very different. And for me, tech is, a key seat around the board table, but equally, it's a servant leadership role, because, that's all in service of the business strategy. I wouldn't want a tech strategy without that being firmly coupled to the business strategy, and my people working very, very closely in terms of collaborating on what that may look like. And, often that is, putting the right tech in the right place. Sometimes that's innovating. A lot of the time it's making sure we're cyber aware and cyber secure, but it's creating those creative energies around the organisation. So actually, it's got a fantastic growth spurt, and it's moving, but also people want to join that sort of organisation. It's interesting, things are happening, and so there's so much, so much of a virtuous circle, I guess, in terms of all of that and building that in an organisation. And yeah, like I say, because and this is really what the book is about. Yesterday's leadership is may have been fantastic, but now it's good, and tomorrow's leadership just requires that whole lot more, right?
Absolutely. And without giving away any of the magic as well, because we don't have the release date exactly just yet, and I'm not going to ask about the title of the book as well, because it's top secret at the minute, which I totally understand as well. Can you give us a bit of an overview of how the book came around, what your objectives are really for the book, and maybe some of the bare bones?
Absolutely.
Tease some listeners.
Oh gosh. So I mean, I've always aimed to write a book, but it's been sort of careful thought about when and how and the right time in life to write that book. I've spent a lot of time working on leadership and digitization and all sorts of different things, and I've spent a lot of time working with different boards at different stages of my life. So I guess all of those things came together. I'd also worked with Harvard Business School for a little while around some of their societal leadership. And so I think folks will have seen the little E squared logo, which is part of the book, but not the title. And that really is a signature symbol around some of the things that the book brings together. So, a lot around entrepreneurial skill, and are so important, particularly in global organizations as well as venture firms. A lot of venture firms have it worked out in terms of how that entrepreneurial skill works, but then it's about harnessing that and taking it to next maturity stages. Global organizations, some are very entrepreneurial, other ones have got into a bit of a process mix, really. So, looking at how that works and what do you really need from that. Some really interesting things there, and it's about humanizing business. How do you bring all of those things together? So lots of different things in there, all a bit of a mix, but it's designed to be a bit of a thought starter in terms of where are we now, and some personal reflect points in terms of our own leadership styles. And every time I proofread the book, I learn something else myself. So,
yeah, I found that as well, making the cut as well. There's a lot of lessons, and I've ordered some of the author's copies, and one for me, just so I can scribble and go through it and just learn and make sure that I'm doing what I'm saying I'm doing as well. Kind of little accountability. I've been fascinated by entrepreneurship for years and years and years. And when my book arrives through your doorstep, you'll see that I've read and listened to hundreds of books as well. I've probably found, for me, it's a 50-50 balance of the learning and the doing as well, to become more entrepreneurial in the things that I do. What are your thoughts there on that kind of entrepreneurial process, or discovery?
Yeah, I think all of it is a little bit of self-discovery as well. I mean, you come into it from many different stages and places in life. I mean, some people walk into their first organization and start being entrepreneurial. Other people go, actually, my key anchor in life is about independence and creating a business of my own. So they dive straight into that. Now, it's good to do that. And of course, there's always lessons and learnings in everything that we do. But it's also good to take a bit of guided counsel around some of that, in terms of when you do dive in, are you equipped? Have you got your life jacket? Have you got everything else ready? And have you got, that suite of friendly advisors and folks that will give you, a bit of a signal as to what's happening in the marketplace, what's useful in terms of the next growth stage. And I would say that the final part of it is very, very personal, in terms of meditating on where you are, where you're looking to take the business, how that sort of fits and sits, and being very honest in terms of how that fits with your lifestyle and what you want from life. Because at the end of the day, life is what it's about. How you choose to spend your time is a decision for us all, isn't it? So really thinking about how that fits. What sort of an entrepreneur are you? Are you a serial entrepreneur? Do you set up stage one and then sell out and go to the next one because that's where you are? Are you actually a long-term entrepreneur? So you actually want to build that legacy, and what does that mean for you personally? So there's some quite deep questions in there, as well as you've got to dive in and get involved in these worlds, right?
Absolutely. And do you get a lot of time for your own personal and self development, Dax, as well? You mentioned the word meditate there, and I just latched onto it because a lot of my younger maybe colleagues or friends or people that I interact with think I'm a little bit of a hippie with my meditating, my ice bath, and my time to journal and such.
I put more and more emphasis on it every day, to be honest with you, and I think at certain stages in life it's really, really healthy to do that, because there's so many commitments that you've got. I'm a mum, I've got my entrepreneurial side, I've got lots of different commitments. So having that time is everyone always says, the relationship you have to nurture is the relationship with yourself, and if that's working well in a very humble way, your other relationships will prosper from that. So I think it's sort of readdressing it to say, actually, it's not this extreme thing. It's something that's really important as part of the daily routine. And for me, I'm always learning. I'm a learner. I did one of these psychometric tests once, and I think I hit 100% on learning for everything in every different style. So I learn from conversation. I read a lot. I like to get qualified in what I do. So, hence why I collected my 3 degrees. And, some entrepreneurs don't do that. And it's different. But for me, because I lead people and I'm asking them to do things, I believe it's important to have that side to you as well. So again, a lot of it is about personal belief set. The humanizing business side of it, it's really about people getting to know you and vice versa. And doesn't everybody want to work for a nice person or work with a nice person, and vice versa? So those sorts of things are less of a sort of mystical journey, but it's kind of like, well, what do I want to be remembered for? What do I care about? And how could I help other people? Which is, I guess, part of the philanthropy side of me, and sort of getting all that side of things moving as well. So it's a bit of a give-get model, I guess.
And I think you've got to take the time to get that down on paper, or at least have some time to formulate those ideas when you're thinking about your legacy and your purpose. Lots of people kind of wing it as they go, but never really get there.
It's a mix. It's a mix, and the book does touch on quite a few topics. Legacy is mentioned with it, as well as building trust, actually. So that there's some really interesting topical themes within there. But from a legacy point of view, I mean, it is we all get busy in life, and like anything, it's a combination of where you are and what's happening, as well as where you want to go. And when you start to harness those two together, it becomes really, really exponential. But in order to do that, it can happen naturally, but if you want to be persistent at that, it takes some disciplines in terms of how you set your day up. And I like to go to the gym and bits and pieces like that, and that's really important. At certain times in life, you can do more or less of that, so it's about reset, rebalance, and the first person you've got to lead is yourself, right? So
yeah, absolutely. I'll put you in touch with Lee Fell, the CEO of Caritas Neurosolutions, who I interviewed last week, and she's running a really exciting business, and well-being and corporate athleticism is something that she's working on as well, and the well-being and health of her team and colleagues is really, really important to her. So I definitely connect you to it. It seems you're very aligned on that as well. Another female role model and leader as well, setting up a business. That's really exciting. And just thinking about the message out there to founders, the C-suite and leaders, if there's maybe one thing that they could do to maintain a technology advantage, or even a mindset or a mantra that they could think about, is there anything that you would say is your go-to when discussing new ideas with boards or leaders, or somebody aspiring to be a leader on the topic of either entrepreneurship, technology, wherever you want to take that?
Yeah, it's a bit of counterintuitive, really, in that the importance of technology is really about understanding the client, the customer, and understanding the business first. So, for me, the advice is to get involved. You don't want a separate technology strategy to a business strategy. That really needs to be intertwined. And if you're setting one up next to the other, then really as a board you need to address that as well, because there are some quite significant shifts that you need to take as a business. So I think when we all look at it, right, in every day we're all a customer or a client of somebody, and we know what good service looks like. We know what will make us return back to a firm. We know that organisation that wowed us when they brought out the next set of product innovations. We know the organisations that when we had a bad moment, they turned it into a wow moment. We know all of that. If you take it back into the technology world, focus on technology, it's easy to forget that. But if you start to put the two together, you kind of go, well, actually, these two things aren't that different. And so the point at which you lead from in the C-suite is a very, very different stance, but it still requires all the respect of the technology expertise, all the understanding of the latest programming technologies, all the understanding of what trends are going to come up next, because they are going to come up next, and some interesting things happening in retail as well in terms of the metaverse, and what's really a customer experience now face to face, because it's about experiences. So harnessing these things, but in a very, very different way. And so, your traditional technologists also needs to be aware that there are other approaches that entrepreneurs are taking in the world. Yeah,
absolutely. No, it's really fascinating. You got me thinking about retail there. I used to have a client and a neighbouring business who were called Scentair, a bit of a plug here. And they specialised in the different scents and smells that, when you go into a great hotel or a great store and you just think, wow, I could just spend all day here. What an experience.
And it's different, right? Because, today, as a technologist, we've been putting all this tech in, we're digitizing all these businesses. So, if you've got the hybrid sort of mindset, and you've got, time is one of the most precious things we have and gift to each other, then, when do I buy online? When do I go into a store? So, the experiences of interacting with folks and all of those sorts of things have to be real experiences, because why would you queue when you can just click a button and it's there, unless, you're trying on clothing and you want to know it fits perfectly. I mean, it's a different thing, but equally, we're here with families, with friends, all of those different things. So, your retail shopping experience might be very, very different in terms of what else you experience. If you're buying a perfume, actually, do you go co-create it yourself as part of the experience? Otherwise, you just buy it online because you bought it last week. So, it's a very, very different world that we're stepping into. And I do see some very, very innovative organisations that are straight into the sweet spot of that. I also see organisations that, have got their digital strategy, got their retail strategy, and are yet to join them up. But I think that's the opportunity for the leaders in those businesses. So exciting all round, but you want to be in the market sweet spot, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And how have you found it as well? Because you've gone from very large organisations where I imagine they're very, very structured. I haven't really worked in a very large corporate, very matrix. I'm just going from feedback here. Everybody knows their lane. How entrepreneurial can you be, and how's it been switching into founder, business owner, and getting your brand out now, away from those big brands?
I mean, to be honest, I work with both. So, Global Transport, we work with FTSE and Fortune, and we work with venture and that side of things. So, I mean, to be honest, I started small business and then worked my way to big business, and then everybody went, "You're big business now, you've got to get smart." I was like, no, it really is no change. The approach and the leadership methodology is very much the same, but I think you make a really good point there, Matt, in terms of, we talk about entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship, and the difference between all of that. If you're a founder of a small organization that's setting up, getting venture capital, the level of risk that you're personally taking is very, very different potentially to if you're part of a larger organization and have that longevity for a certain period. However, whatever job we're in, we all need to perform and hit all the societal goals, the commercial targets, make everybody happy. And so, there are different sort of risk profiles around all of that. But it's really, I would say, organization specific as to how much opportunity there is to do that, and also very individual specific in terms of, do you sit there and be part of the culture that's there, or do you go and drive something as well? So it's a bit of a two-way street, and it's respecting the lanes, but also in a friendly way, challenging the norms. So you've got to play with it, mold it a little bit. And people gravitate to people that they enjoy working with, and that's the sort of natural state of business. So in there, I guess you describe a bit of fun, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And what about your own journey, Dax, as well? And how have you found, Domus Search is part of a larger organisation, but only set up really 18 months ago. I've had to do a lot of the legwork to get the business out there, get the name out there as well. How have you found? What have been the best channels for getting your message out there and getting Global Transform in front of the right people? Has LinkedIn been a big powerhouse for you? The forums, the Forbes Tech Council, have you navigated that as well? What's been the sort of best experience?
I would say it's a combination, and the marketeer within me, you know, it is about integrated marketing in the nicest sense, but doing that from a place of service. So what do you offer? Really understanding where businesses are at, and providing value, whether that would be, you know, in face-to-face conversations, building on current and new relationships, which I love that, right? I really love that. But also a lot of what folks see from me as well is the, you know, the online, the LinkedIn, all of those sorts of things as well. And it's a mix, right? So, you know, I'll be chatting with someone one week, and then the next week they'll be on LinkedIn, and, you know, they'll happen to have posted something that's really pertinent, and, you know, we'll click on it from there. So I would say, you know, over time the two merge, so it's not an either or. And I know people look at, you know, how much do you invest in a social media strategy? How much do you invest in relationships and face-to-face? My guidance on it would be, for what it's worth, and other people will have different views, is invest in your relationships, but the channels through which you choose to do that, you need to consider at the time and point that you're in. So blending that. And I'm very hands-on. I mean, I've worked in lots of large organizations, but I'm very hands-on. So I know what happens in the nitty-gritty. You know, if I needed to tweak my own website, I could. You know, it's kind of, and that's the fun of learning, right? Because if you know you can sort of work with those things, also then when you get new ideas, you're kind of going, could we possibly do that? And I know we could sort of play with this and sort of morph it that way, but what about this? And then, you know, someone who's a deep expert in that area will give you kind of a different view on what else is possible, and you open up so many more opportunities that way. But that really comes from, you know, irrespective of the size of the organization or organizations you're working with, being prepared to dive into the nitty-gritty when you need to, and what do you really learn from that? So asking the right questions rather than just absorbing everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've noticed that you're very busy online as well, prolific in fact in terms of the content production and engagement. Are you attending or hosting or speaking at any upcoming webinars or anything that people could tune in and listen to?
Yeah, there's quite a few coming up. So we've got Industry Thinkers, that's in September. So that's through Inspired Business Media. We're talking about the importance of the technology, entrepreneurial relationship and entrepreneurial IT. So some of the really key topics, and opportunity for leaders around the world really to network with other leaders that have that open mindset. So, and it's a beautiful venue as well. So I've got bits and pieces happening there. We've got some bits coming up with hot topics as well. Again, another fab venue. So the first one was in Twickenham. The next one's in the ground of Tottenham Hotspur. So again, there we'll be getting lots of IT technology leaders together, and a real sort of C-suite conversation around lots of different topic areas as well. So quite exciting there. And then yes, there'll be some other sort of publications, you know, so some roundtables and bits and pieces, but that's on a more sort of intimate basis as well. And you know, if folks want to reach out to me, they're very, very welcome.
Yeah, wonderful. And the book launch, have you figured out roughly when that might be coming?
Yeah, it will be in the second half of September for the actual launch, but it will be sort of ready a little bit before that. My launch team is doing a few bits in the background at the moment, so I'm sure they will spark into action next. So yeah, hopefully, as I say, it's meant to be a bit of a thought starter. It's collecting together a lot of personal views, and it is meant to be that thought starter. So, you know, my view, very humbly, is one view in the world. I do like hearing constructive conversations from the people, and that really for me is the essence of the book. And you know, if anyone takes something away from it, fantastic. You know,
absolutely. And I found the feedback to be great for my little book as well, in that it's very personal, and the story is very personal. And what I found over the years, having read a lot, is that after a while things start to sound the same, and I thought, well, that's kind of the same thing, just said differently. So what I really enjoy now is the autobiographies or biographies as well, where you really get into the mind of the person writing it or telling the story as well, from personal experience. I find that so much more powerful in a world where we're all talking about the same things for the majority of the time.
Definitely, and you know, that personal connection, you know, having opportunity to ask questions in all of these different forums, I find really fascinating. And people will often say to me, you know, Dax, you're really quiet, but actually I'm listening intently to what folks are saying, and you know, I love that side of things. And if they want me then to speak, then I'm happy to. But all of those different views really percolate, and it drives that conversation. So it's always a bit iterative, and it's really nice sometimes not to talk about all the really heavy topics and things like that. I just like getting to know people, to be honest, and hopefully through this they get to know a little bit of the real me as well.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And just closing out, looking back over the years, Dax, if you were to give your 18-year-old self a call as well, what would you say to that younger Dax? And would you give her any advice, or has it all worked out to plan?
Well, I'm sure I'd give her lots of advice. You've got to believe in yourself. You've got to believe in yourself. Whether other people believe in you or not, you always have to believe in yourself. But you have to do that in a very humble way. When times are tough, really revisit that and understand why you're feeling as you're feeling. What else is that telling you about your leadership style? And recognize that will lead to a next place of strength. But for that, I'm a great believer that life gives you a rich tapestry, and the real relationship is with yourself. So the more you know that, the more you can lead a significant life.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Something I'm playing around with is a success list. So it's times that I've been to really, where my back's been up against the wall, and I've had to really dig deep, and how I got through it and what I did to get through it. And it's a small book at the moment. It's not going to be a book that I'm going to write, but it's a useful tool for me to look back at and say, okay, I've been in that scenario before, and that's what happened, and that's how I came out of it. If I'm ever in a funk and don't have any ideas as to how to move something forward, there's some nice little action steps. That's really nice. And I think, believing in yourself is so powerful, because there's very few people around you, I think, at any given time that believe in you as much as you can believe in yourself. There's very few mentors come along over the years that offer that.
Yeah, I would say to you, think, one, I'm very interested in that. Whether you write it as a book or not, do let me know, Matt. So that would be very interesting. But also, you learn in life who's there for you all the time and believes in you all the time. You can't rely on that. You have to rely on yourself. It's really, really important to have that level of self-resilience. And there will be people that really support you when you're doing well, but you will know the people that support you all the way through and how they've supported you. And at the end of everything, you kind of go, how did we all make each other feel? And that's, beyond all of the theories and all of the practical experiences, you're going to remember that person that was there in that pivotal moment, that helped you when you needed help, that supported you when you needed support, that cheered for you, when nobody else did. Those are the people you remember, whether that's a parent, a close friend, or whatever that is really for you. But if I sit there, in my rocking chair later on, then those are the memories I hope to hold. Yeah,
wonderful. That's an amazing place to finish, and I hope people remember this conversation for many, many years to come. I'll sign off there, Dax. I'm so pleased. I'll make sure all the contact details for you are available through the podcast and the content, so they can connect with you and get the value that I've just absorbed during this conversation. So thanks so much again, Dax.
Thank you so much, Matt. Really appreciate your time.
Absolute pleasure.